century, almost every Latin American country was colonized by Spain and divided into virreinatos. Almost every virreinato was unhappy with the way Spanish treated them, which is why they decided to fight for independence and claim what Spanish have been stealing from them.
The economy in Latin America in 19th century was moved by agriculture, taxes, and exports. In Latin America, in 19th century, most of people were farmers. They farmed to feed and clothe themselves. In other words, they make their own food to survive. Another fact is that most of the people did not own land. The land was owned only by a few. The taxing system was based on imports and export duties. National governments depend on taxation of international trade, which it meant they were unable to control their ingress. It also meant that they could not increase the ingress when needed. What it meant was that they were not levying direct taxes on the wealthy and influential. The tax system did what the upper class wanted. A further consequence was dependency upon foreign creditors to apply the capital needed to basic governmental operations. Government borrowed to meet their needs, desires, and deficits. In Latin America, there were two kinds of exports, agricultural and mineral. For example, Argentina and Uruguay exported candles, hides, and salted beef. Bolivia exported silver and mercury. Peru, silver and leather. Colombia, precious metals and sugar. Brazil, sugar, leather, and coffee. Mexico, silver, gold, and cotton. And most of these exports went to Europe. Little went to each other, none in huge volumes even in Argentina until the late 19th centuries. The country lacked capital, communication networks, and the technology to develop export business. Besides, the upper class was able to meet itself without much economic expansion. Societies were run for benefits of the upper classes. Ownership of what was valuable was concentrated in a few hands.
Two major conflicts in Latin America during the 19th century were the War of Independence of Venezuela and Chile's Independence War. The War of Independence of Venezuela began in 1810 with the establishment of La Junta Suprema Defensora de los Derechos of Fernando VII and ended with the establishment of the Rio Declaration of Independence. In April 19, 1810, the Proclamation of Independence was declared, which means that the people began to manifest to become independent from the Spanish government. In July 5, 1811, the Act of Independence was signed, in which Venezuela disapproves the Spanish government. This led the beginning of the War of Independence. It was elaborated by Juan Germán Rossio and Francisco Isnardi and approved by all of the members of the Congress. Venezuela was the first Ibero-American country who declared its independence, and they thanked this to Simón Bolívar, who is known as the Libertador de América, which means the Liberator of America. They gave him this nickname because he helped more countries, not only Venezuela, to become independent. Examples of this are Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. In Chile, it happened kind of the same. They also wanted to become free and get rid of Spain. This process of independence lasted 10 years and started in 1810. The independence of Chile is divided in three stages: Patria Vieja, Reconquista, and Patria Nueva. During Patria Vieja, 1810 to 1814, Creoles took the power of the king. They weren't happy with the Spanish government, but by that time they didn't have a clear idea of becoming independent. Also, new liberal ideas were proposed, such as popular sovereignty, constitutionalism, and the laissez-faire, which refers to a complete freedom in economy. In Reconquista, 1814 to 1817, Fernando VII got back the power and became even more strict, and obviously erased all the liberal ideas that the people had proposed. Chile got help from Peru, and together with the help of José de San Martín, they started preparing an army to fight. During Patria Nueva, 1817 to 1823, a war between the Venezuelan army and the Spanish began. In February 12, 1818, the independence of Chile was formally declared and was signed by Miguel Sañartú, Hipólito de Villegas, and Bernard O'Higgins.
Latin America had been colonized by Spain and Portugal since the 15th century to the 18th century. Yet, in the 19th century, Latin America started their movements of independence from both Spain and Portugal. Even since independence, many of the Latin nations have experienced similar trends and fights. However, there are also huge differences between each one of them. Chile has depended on great external powers for economic exchange and political influence: Spain in the colonial period, Britain in the 19th century, and the United States in the 20th century. Since winning their independence in 1818, the nation has had a history of civilian rules by a few countries in the world. In the 19th century, Chile became the first country in Latin America to install a durable constitutional system of government, which encouraged the development of an incredible range of political parties. Military interventions in politics has been rare in Chile, occurring only at times of extraordinary social crisis, as in 1891. These interventions often brought great transformations. All the fundamental changes in the Chilean political system and its constitutions have occurred with the intervention of the armed forces acting in concert with civilian politicians.
What are your thoughts of Latin America in the 1800s?
Well, it was a period of enlightenment for the people living in Latin America. They started seeing how they were oppressed by the government and how they didn't need any king in Spain or king in France to rule them. They just had to trade by themselves and get the resources by themselves to go out to the world and start trading. They didn't need other people from other countries, foreigners. So I think they saw that, and they had the influence from France and America to have an independence, to have a revolution. So they just wanted to free themselves, and that's perfectly fine depending on the region. So if you don't need the help, obviously you don't need someone to help you.